let's jump back over the table and we'll have a look at this quilt cover category, the Super King quilt cover category. I suppose first I should start, if you've got a question about Super King quilt covers, jump into the comments, let us know. Yep. If you've got any sort of questions that might pop into your mind, let us know those as we're going through. And I'll just give you a brief overview. The Super King quilt cover, the actual size of it is 270 centimetres wide and then 240 centimetres long. So the 240, the length is from head to toe on the bed. So it's quite large. It's the largest quilt cover that we've got. And it's, I suppose the question would be is, well, what do you use it on? Well, obviously you put it on a Super King bed. That's the big bed, that the 200 by 200 centimetres or 204, 203, square. They're huge. They're not as popular or as common yet anyway, but you would put the Super King quilt cover on a Super King bed, and you could also put it on a king bed. That's where we sell most of them, to going onto king beds, because they're just like an upsize where you might want it to be a little bit more luxurious, and the quilt is hanging down the side of the bed a little bit more, a little bit less fighting with the partner in the night. But the king bed's pretty big anyway. But so you got a bit more coverage with the Super King quilt cover and quilt on top of a king bed. And it's particularly handy too, because the king beds, sometimes if you've got a really deep mattress, you just might want to have enough cover to cover the depth of the mattress, because some mattresses are really deep now. So if you go to a bigger quilt cover, you'll get better coverage on down the side of the bed, even if you might just be wanting to cover the mattress. It might be difficult, and you can do that with a Super King quilt cover. We've got a whole bunch of colours that are available as well in the category that I think is in the top of the description up there. Yep. And there's a whole bunch of colours. So there's blacks, greys and silvers, all the monochromes sort of colours. There's blues, there's reds and pinks, creams, the browns, linens and sort of beigey colours is in there, whites. There's all of them really, purples and yellows. There's even multicoloured quilt covers. There's probably quite a lot of those, because a lot of quilt covers have got a lot of multicolour. So there's a lot of those in there as well. So many colours available. There's also different patterns. The largest quantity of patterns that we've got is like the floral and the geometric patterns. They're probably the biggest representation that we've got. And there's also solid colours and plain colours, like the ascots that we showed you, those cushions, they come in quilt covers as well. They're plain colours, but even though they're the waffle texture, but they'd be in that plain category. There's also less popular printed designs as well, like there's an animal prints in there, some damask sort of patterns, and some striped. They're a bit lesser quantity, and textured, like the chenille. You'll get chenille in there as well. So a whole bunch of different colours and patterns all available there in the Super King quilt covers. Now, a couple of questions I've got 3 questions that people often ask about Super King. There's one of them is there such a thing as Super King doonas or quilts, the inserts for them? People often have trouble, I think, finding them. So yes, they are available. We've got a whole range of quilts, or the inserts for them, and they suit the size of the doona cover, that 270 by 240 centimetre. They fit inside those quite well, and so they're available. Another question is, can you put a king doona inside a Super King cover? Well, the answer is obviously yes, you can do it, but there's a few things that might not work to your favour if you put a smaller quilt inside of a bigger cover, and that would be that they'll move around. They'll move around more if you put a king in a Super King quilt cover. They'd move around a bit more, and if you wanted to stop it moving around, you could apply like the quilt clips, but you probably wouldn't be able to do that if the quilt cover doesn't, if the doona doesn't go to the corner of the quilt cover anyway. So you sort of haven't even got a solution. So you can do it. It will move around, and there'll be less insulation as well, because if it slips off to one side, or if it's moving around, or it's just, even if you manage to get it into the middle, there's not insulation on the edges of the the cover, so it might not do its job properly either. So it's worth getting the right insert for the cover, and in this case it's Super King, and they're available, you can get them. The last point is what's the different size between a King and a Super King? How much difference is there? And just basically it's 30 centimetres. It's 30 centimetres wider and 30 centimetres longer, roughly. So the size of a king bed is, doing a quilt cover is at 240 centimetres wide and then 210 length, and the Super King is 270 wide and 240 in the length. So if you can do your maths, it's the width was actually 25 centimetres longer, but you know, round it up, 30 centimetres, ballpark.
Yep.
Anyway, do we have any questions? Any other questions about Super King stuff?
Yeah, so we had Kerry say that she loves her Super King size quilt and quilt cover because she's got a king bed, and she does exactly what you were saying before, where you put the Super King quilt cover on top of the king bed, and it makes it like a more designer look. It's got that
just
overhang.
Full. Yeah.
And then we had Amanda say that she has 2 long single electric beds which take a Super King cover, but sometimes she can get confused when placing the cover on the quilt because the quilt's just orientated the different way. And I said, yeah, I can imagine that would be the case because it's 2.5 meters of stuff that you're dealing with. It can be quite hard to orientate it the right way when you just had a look at it out of the packet.
Yeah.
But typically when you're looking at it, it'll be the longer sides, the ones to go horizontally, the width of the bed.
Yeah.
And the only question we had was from Amanda, who asked, do the quilt cover clips, you mentioned them, and we've actually got them behind you in the shelf
here,
do the quilt cover clips ruin the fabric of the cover at all? Now, you guys have actually used these quilt cover clips on your bed yourselves. How did that go with the fabric of the cover?
They clip into the seams where the top and the bottom of the quilt cover is meet, and there's a seam on the inside. They clip into there, so it doesn't actually affect the outside, but you are putting holes in it, but it's in that sewn seam. Similar, the quilt is the same. It's just right on the edge. So you're not damaging. You're putting holes because they're fastened on, but it's not detrimental. It doesn't ruin any appearance. It's like you don't know they're there.
No, and it's on the inside, isn't it?
It's on the inside.
Yeah.
It's on the inside. If you bump into them, they're right in the corners. If you bump into them, you know they're there because they're little plastic things, so they're a bit harder than your doona is. Yeah. But it's this in the corners. It's not. You don't. Once they're there, you don't know that they're there.
Yeah. Amanda said, "Thanks to the answers, much appreciated."
Yep.
And Kerry's just dropped a very helpful hint. She said that I had to mark the quilt to know the correct side as to what's bottom and what's top and what's side to side, which is a pretty cool way of doing things. I don't think anyone...
That's pretty simple, isn't it? Just a permanent marker. Yeah. That's really simple.
And I can imagine... I'm not sure. I haven't looked recently, but it would be interesting to see if there's tags on a certain corner of the quilt that you get. So you go, oh, I found the tag. That's the bottom right-hand corner, if that makes sense.
It is usually the bottom.
Yeah,
left or right.
We've just had Michelle say that the tags are either on the bottom left-hand or right-hand side. So maybe that's a better way of
identifying as well. Yeah, like the washing instructions. Sometimes there's the brand tag or something across there as well.
In case you don't want to permanent mark your quilt and accidentally get it running throughout the washing machine or something like that.
Yeah,
but
I don't know if that tagging, I could be wrong, but I don't know if that tagging's consistent with every brand or every manufacturer. Well, because I was having a thought about fitted sheets, I thought the same thing, that the washing instruction tag was in the same place on each brand, but I've noticed it wasn't. It wasn't actually the same. So,
cool.
But it could be either. Yeah.
So. All right. Well,